The farm hotel gate opened like a theater curtain, and I entered already knowing that night, everything would be about performance. The air smelled of wet grass and expensive perfume. The trimmed lawn drew satin paths, and the lights hanging from the trees imitated domesticated constellations. I came in a dark blue dress, braids tied in a low bun, heels that made no noise. I learned early to walk without calling the guard. At the reception, a table with rustic crates, linen ribbons, and professional smiles. "Good afternoon, ma'am, full name," said the event planner, white, with impeccable straight hair, a clip on her earpiece. I said my name, the same as the groom's, and she searched the list as if hunting for a typo. "Ah, yes, groom's family." Smile. "Your access kit." She handed me a white paper sticker, black letters in uppercase. "Limited access guest." I felt the thin plastic stick to my fingertips as if refusing me. I looked around. The others were receiving engraved metallic wristbands, rigid cards with grosgrain ribbons, a small gift with the bride and groom's initials in gold. "Got paper? It's just for organizing the flow, you know," said the event planner, tilting her head at a measured angle. "The VIP areas and the groomsmen's lounge have entry control." Control. A good word for those who dictate, a terrible one for those who obey. I stuck the sticker on my chest, on the left side, over the bone that learns to hold things. The cold shine of the tape reflected the light, and, for a second, I saw myself transformed into a walking reminder that daughter can be a word with an asterisk. A groomsman passed by, his wristband tinkling, and winked. "Hey manager, save me some water if there's any left." Smirk. Don't even ask how I know. When a black woman enters a room, the work arrives before she does. The hallway to the main hall smelled of eucalyptus and orange blossom. On the panel with the seating chart, my eyes traced the design as if reading a score. I do this for a living. The family lounge shone in the center, surrounded by round tables with glasses aligned in a triangle. I looked for my name. I found it in the external sector, table 12 side, near the service exit. A metal butterfly held my breath for a moment. "Ah, here." The hostess appeared, overly friendly. "If you could wait over there, please. The official photos will be later." Over there was a straw poof, next to the speaker. "ID, please." I handed it over. I saw two couples enter without being questioned. "Protocol," she justified, returning my ID without looking at me. The string music began to spread sugar in the air. My mother appeared in the distance, in a champagne dress, her hair in waves, a shine she always knew how to turn on when she needed an audience. She said something in my brother's mother-in-law's ear. They both gave me a porcelain smile, pretty from afar, cutting up close. I remembered other parties. Me behind the cameras, holding flowers, fastening veils, adjusting chairs. I remembered adolescence when they would say, "Anna is great backstage." Backstage is the polite word they use when they want to take you out of the center without getting their hands dirty. I went to the bar to get water. "Are you with the staff, ma'am?" the bartender asked automatically. "No. I'm family." He was embarrassed. I was not surprised. In the mirror behind the bottles, I saw my reflection with the black and white sticker. A label they stuck on to fit a caption. A bridesmaid bumped into me lightly, a soft-spoken request. "Can you hold my clutch? I'll be right back." I held it for 3 seconds and returned it with a smile my grandmother would call a prayer, one of those that protect without making a sound. When the music changed to a familiar instrumental, the event planner ran after me with her clipboard. "Sorry, honey, we're adjusting the flow. Could you avoid the groomsmen's hallway until the toast begins?" Avoid. Small verb with a big shadow. I took a deep breath and went to the side of the garden. The wind moved the lights like domesticated fireflies. The dress brushed my knee and I wanted to laugh out loud, but I held it in. Laughter here becomes evidence against us. On the easel with calligraphy, I read the phrase chosen by the bride and groom. "Love has no borders." I looked up and saw the railing with a satin ribbon dividing the central lounge. The metaphor presented itself, uninvited. Standing there, I had to remind myself that it wasn't today they tried to teach me to fit in. It was my whole life. Today they just provided graphic material. When I returned to the hall circuit, my mother was already walking towards me. She held my hands in hers as if warming something fragile. The smell of hairspray and orange blossom. Her eyes shining, her voice low, a trained sweetness. "Daughter, today you avoid trouble. For us." I looked at the paper sticker on my chest, then at the metallic shine on her wristband, and I realized that, at that wedding, the most expensive decoration was not flowers. It was borders. I pressed my lips into a short smile that promised nothing. And before she let go of my hand, I tilted my face, brought my mouth close to her ear, and whispered, calm as a sheathed knife, "Mom, who put this on me?" She pretended not to understand, but the tremor at the corner of her lips gave everything away. "It's just protocol, honey. You know how these things are," she replied, and each syllable came wrapped in social varnish, the same tone she used when she wanted me to accept humiliations as if they were kindnesses. The word protocol kept spinning in my head, like a label stuck to the inside of my skin. The music in the background changed to instrumental jazz, and the sound of clinking glasses seemed to punctuate my anger. I looked around. All the women in the central lounge, white, smiling, wore silver wristbands. Each one gleamed under the warm light of the suspended lamps, while my paper badge began to wrinkle in the heat. It was as if the sticker itself said, "You don't last here." My mother stroked my arm with a light but firm gesture and whispered, "Please, let's not ruin your brother's day." I took a deep breath, trying to let the air in without breaking. "Ruin," I repeated calmly. "I wasn't the one who started it." She looked at me as if begging without saying it. "Hold on a little longer." Meanwhile, the photographers were taking portraits of the groom's family. My brother, smiling, next to his wife, his in-laws, the name aunts. I was left out, watching from the side, where the spotlights barely reached. The groom didn't see me, or pretended not to. It was in that instant that I realized. Silence is the most disguised invitation to oblivion. I walked to the bar and asked for a glass of sparkling water. The bartender hesitated, glancing at my badge, then served me. With every micro-gesture, the same message. "You are a tolerated presence, not a belonging one." "Nice event, huh?" said a bridesmaid who approached. "What do you do for work again?" "I manage corporate events." "Ah, that's why you're so comfortable. You almost look like you're on the team." I smiled faintly. "I'm not on the team. I'm family." She blinked, laughed awkwardly, and walked away, stumbling over her own excuses. I went to the nearest mirror, and for a moment, I observed my own expression. The calm I wore was an armor. Inside, my head was drawing maps, connecting signs. Working with logistics taught me something. Every control has a loophole. Every hierarchy a coordination error. And I was about to find my gaze swept the room like a slow-motion film camera. The main table, full of gleaming cutlery. The side where they put the distant friends. The corridor that led backstage, where the team kept the equipment. A backstage space, invisible to the guests. The same place that, ironically, had always been my territory. I took a deep breath and walked that way, with measured, almost silent steps. The corridors smelled of waxed wood and men's cologne. I passed by waiters balancing trays of champagne and entered a small side room, where an employee was adjusting the sound control panel. She looked at me, a little confused. "Sorry, restricted access," she said. "I know," I replied, showing the badge. "I'm a limited access guest. I think this is where I belong." The woman laughed, not understanding, and went back to work. I approached the sound table and saw something familiar. The seating chart taped down, full of pen annotations. And there in the corner my name crossed out, with a thin arrow pointing to table 12 side. The same elegant, curved handwriting I would recognize even with my eyes closed. My mother's handwriting. I squeezed the paper between my fingers, and the sound of the plastic crinkling seemed like the snap of a decision. As I returned to the hall, each step echoed an old phrase of hers. "We need to behave well so as not to give them a reason." I grew up hearing that. And I understood too late that not giving a reason never saved anyone. It only taught the world to silence you more delicately. I stopped near the balcony, the fresh air on my face, and observed the linen-covered tables. On each one, a small golden card with the guest's name, perfect calligraphy, the scent of varnish. On mine, the name was wrong. Anna, with 2 N's. A small but cruel detail, a way to make me someone else, to erase what is familiar. I looked at the sky and thought, maybe dignity is this, refusing to fit into a space that only allows you to exist provisionally. And for those who are listening to me now, perhaps recognizing this taste of paper in your mouth, I leave a request. Stay here with me. This story still has too many twists, and anyone who has been diminished with a smile knows that silence is just the beginning of the noise. I took a deep breath, put the seating chart in my purse, and started walking again calmly, one step at a time. The orchestra began to play the bride and groom's entrance music, and amidst the applause I could only think, no one takes me out of a ceremony that carries my blood. And right there, between the clapping and the lights, a doubt cut through my head like lightning. How far can a mother go to teach you not to be a nuisance? The ceremony began with the clatter of cutlery being hastily collected and the sweet sound of violins echoing through the hall. The orchestra tried to turn everything into eternity, but eternity only lasts until the first sideways glance. I sat at table 12 near the service exit, and from there I could see the glow of the central lounge, where my entire family was, except for me. The sisal runner formed a straight line to the altar. The bridesmaids in pastel dresses posed like rehearsed flowers, and my brother, smiling, waited at the altar as if nothing was out of place. I watched everything in silence, trying to understand what hurt more: the badge stuck to my chest or the fact that no one seemed to notice I was invisible. The mother of the bride approached and greeted me with an elegant smile. "Anna, so glad you could make it. I thought you were on the decoration team. Your dress is professional." "Thank you," I replied, and professional sounded more like an insult than a compliment. She laughed, satisfied, and returned to her group of ladies. The master of ceremonies asked everyone to turn off their cell phones. I turned mine off, but first I took 3 quick photos. The paper badge, the empty table around me, and the hall in the background with my mother at the center. I saved them in an album called Limited Access. I didn't know why yet. I just knew I would need to remember every detail. The ceremony continued. Beautiful words about love, union, and equality. Phrases that sounded hollow in the air, as if they had been memorized in a language I didn't speak. When the officiant said, "Love embraces all differences," a laugh escaped me. Small, short, almost imperceptible, but enough for my mother to give me a look. That look. The same one that said, "Control the tone of your skin, your voice, your thoughts." At the end, applause, tears, hugs. I remained seated. I saw my brother and the bride walk down the aisle as petals flew in the air. The couple stopped to take a photo with the immediate family. The photographer, confused, asked, "All the siblings together, right?" My mother answered too quickly, "Just the grooms." The silence that followed was cutting. I stood up slowly and took a step forward. "But I am the groom's sister." The photographer hesitated. "Oh, of course. Sorry, I thought." My mother interrupted dryly. "She prefers not to be in the picture." It was there, between flashes and applause, that something inside me snapped, not loudly but definitively. I left the hall and walked to the side corridor, where the air was colder and the sound of the party was muffled. I leaned against the wall and let my body remember that it still existed. The badge on my chest was starting to peel at the edges, the glue failing like old dignity. I tore off the paper and folded it into a small square, as if burying a secret. As I breathed, I heard voices in the next room. It was the event planner and another woman laughing softly. It was his mother who asked to remove the sister's name from the central list. She said she had opinions that were too strong. Imagine, at a wedding. "Ah, I see. You have to maintain the aesthetic harmony, right?" "Course. That's how traditional families are. Everything is calculated." I stood there, listening to my own nails scratching the wall. Each of their laughs was a caption from my childhood. "Don't talk loud, don't talk back. This is not the place for that. I left slowly without making a sound, but my blood was pulsing too loudly to feign neutrality. I passed by the mirror in the corridor and saw myself in full. The elegant dress, the serene face, and inside a woman boiling. I thought, this is how disguised racism works, with expensive perfume and guest lists. I returned to the main hall and took a glass of champagne from a waiter's tray. "Would you like to make a toast, ma'am?" he asked. "Not yet," I replied. While the bride threw the bouquet and the cameras flashed, my mother circulated among the guests, greeting people who never remembered my name. And then I saw what I shouldn't have seen, a small glint of paper in her hand, folded in four just like mine. She was holding another badge identical to mine, but with the adhesive still intact. She had kept the label they gave me. I felt my body go cold. The noise of the party became distant. She didn't seem sorry, she seemed satisfied. I approached slowly, the sound of my heels muffled by the carpet. "Mom, why do you still have that?" She looked at me as if holding a tight rein. "Because it's the easiest way to avoid embarrassment." "For whom?" "For everyone." The answer came clean, polished, without hesitation. I looked around. The illuminated hall, the photographer capturing smiles, love being celebrated under contract, and I thought, what they call harmony is just control with flowers. At that moment, I realized that the paper that labeled me might be fragile, but the silence that sustained it was steel. I folded the badge again calmly and put it in my purse. IT was no longer a symbol of shame. It was proof, and anyone who works with events knows. All proof is used to write a script that this time would not end with applause, but with revelation. The party had already reached the peak of euphoria when I decided to leave the corner. The colored lights spun like the beacons of a ship that never returns to the same port. Laughter echoed from the center of the hall, where guests danced on an illuminated glass floor. The DJ mixed pop hits with flashbacks from the 2000s, and the air was thick with sweet perfume and expensive drinks. As the band changed rhythm, I walked between the tables with my champagne glass still full. It was curious to observe. All the gazes that avoided me were wrapped in trained smiles. "So glad you could make it, Anna. You look beautiful. Wow, you look like your mother in this light." The kind of compliment that is nothing more than a varnish for embarrassment. On the other side, my mother was talking to the event planner and a man in a beige suit, the event manager. I discreetly pointed my phone and started recording a video. The camera captured from a distance, but the microphone recorded everything. "We need to keep the flow as planned," she was saying. "I don't want any confusion or unnecessary comments." The man nodded. "Understood, Mrs. Marta. The young lady is already in the external sector." Young lady. That's what he called me, young lady. The daughter became a function, the name became noise. I took another step and recognized one of the papers on the table, a copy of the Access spreadsheet. There was a table with names, colors, and levels. Gold, Family, Service, Limited. At the top, my mother's email with her digital signature. And the cruelest part, the note next to my name. Avoid prominent photos. I felt my stomach turn. Every line of that spreadsheet was a new version of my exclusion. And everything there had the tone of naturalness of someone who organizes tables, not people. I took out my phone and took a quick photo. The flash went off for a second, and my mother turned around. "Anna, what are you doing here?" Her voice was firm, controlled, with that same tone as always, the tone that mixes embarrassment and authority. "This is a technical area, dear. Go to your table, please." I smiled slightly. Technical area. I feel right at home then. "Anna." She frowned. "Not now." When then?" The manager cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "It's all right, Mrs. Marta, I'll take care of it." "You don't need to take care of me," I said, a laugh escaping. "You've been doing that my whole life." She took a step closer, and the familiar perfume hit me, a mix of lavender and power. "Please don't embarrass me. You've already done that for both of us." Her gaze hardened. The social mask began to crack. "I just wanted to avoid comments, Anna. Your brother deserves a perfect day. And what do I deserve? A paper sticker on my chest saying I can only go as far as the kitchen. Her voice lowered. You know how it is. Your way draws attention. My way or my color. The silence that followed was so thick you could almost bite it. The manager looked away. The sound from the dance floor seemed distant. I could have sworn that even the air in the hall hesitated for a moment. She took a deep breath, composing herself. Don't do this here. It's already done, Mom. You just didn't expect me to know how to read the backstage. I walked away slowly, leaving the glass on the table. The champagne was bubbling calm, as if pretending not to see the fire that had been lit. In the corridor I stopped in front of a mirror. My reflection trembled slightly, but my eyes were firm. I remembered the first time I felt ashamed of my mother. I must have been about 10. It was a family lunch, and an aunt commented that I had a beautiful color but harsh features. My mother laughed. Not out of malice, I think. Out of instinct. The same instinct that now made her erase me to fit in. I sat on one of the wooden benches in the garden and let my breathing find its rhythm. The distant sound of laughter and the DJ seemed like another language. I took my phone out of my purse and started rereading the email I had photographed. Avoid prominent photos. The sentence burned more than alcohol. I created a new folder on my phone. Wedding proofs. I renamed each file. limitedbadge.jpg, seatingplan.png, mommymail1.jpg. I looked at the screen and smiled with the irony of someone who finally understands the game. Inside, something was reorganizing. I was no longer the daughter who accepted shame as protocol. I was the woman who knew the weight of every document. And that's when the air changed. I heard footsteps behind me. Someone was approaching. The manager's voice muffled. Ma'am, they asked me to collect these photos. Mrs. Marta got very nervous. Turned slowly. She asked for them, right? He nodded, uncomfortable. Then you can tell her she doesn't need to worry. The photos are already saved in the cloud. And if she wants to delete any, she'll have to explain why. The man stepped back, surprised. Are you saying that? I'm saying that I learned to be invisible, but not stupid. I took the crumpled badge from my purse and held it out to him. Here, give it back to whoever ordered it. The glue doesn't stick anymore, and frankly, neither do I. I returned to the hall, and the lights seemed even colder, but my chest didn't. Because now, every detail, every look, every sideways laugh, it was all material. And whoever has lived the role of exclusion one day learns to write the script of revenge. I returned to the hall as if stepping onto a battlefield. Only this time, the weapon was silence. The party continued, beautiful, grand, organized to seem perfect. The lights danced on the crystal chandeliers, and the sound of glasses clinking mixed with the laughter from the central tables. Nothing there screamed error, but everything whispered exclusion. I sat down again at table 12, the forgotten corner near the service exit. The waiters hurried past with full trays, swerving around me as if I were an obstacle. At the table next to me, a couple of acquaintances commented loudly. It's so nice when a family knows how to maintain standards, isn't it? The man laughed. Yes. The wedding is magazine-worthy. Almost everyone is elegant. Almost. The almost landed on the table like a sideways knife. I didn't need to look to know they were talking about me. I took a deep breath and touched my purse, feeling my phone, my black box. The mother of the groom, my mother, shone in the center of the hall, flanked by guests. People praised her. You thought of everything. What good taste. Everything is so harmonious. Harmony, that word that has always been the perfect excuse to erase what doesn't fit. The DJ announced the start of the speeches, and the microphone was passed around amidst smiles and rehearsed tears. When it was my mother's turn, everyone applauded. She held the microphone elegantly and said, "Today is a day of love, family, and union. And love, when it's true, knows its place." I felt my whole body tense up. Knows its place. She smiled as she said it, but I understood the sentence. I was living proof that, for her, love had borders, labels, and badges. I took out my phone and opened the wedding proofs folder. I reviewed each image, each audio. The printed email with the request to avoid prominent photos. The seating chart with my name crossed out. The recording where she told the manager, "The young lady is already in the external sector." It was all there. Concrete. I looked at the stage where she continued her speech, the golden dress reflecting the light. And I thought, how many generations of black women have had to hear this same message, said in so many different ways, and swallow it silently so as not to seem ungrateful? Well, this story was not going to end like this. I opened the Notes app and wrote, "When they diminish you with smiles, don't scream." Record. Then, I leaned over the table and recorded a short audio, speaking softly. If you're hearing this, and you've ever been put in a corner in the name of family peace, let your heart speak. Come in. We're not alone. No silence is worth more than the truth. I sent the audio to my work group of women, those who knew what it was like to fight for space even in the elevator. The table next to me laughed at some joke, and I remained there, serene. For the first time, I felt the control slip from their hands and fall into mine. From the stage, my mother finished her speech. "May love continue to unite us, even when pride wants to push us apart." The hall applauded. I clapped too. Slowly, firmly, my eyes fixed on her. She noticed. And, for a second, the mask of sweetness trembled. The DJ resumed the music, and the hall filled with dancing. I went to the bar and ordered a ginger ale. The bartender, the same one who had mistaken me for staff earlier, smiled nervously. "You are family, right, ma'am? I saw you at the side table." "But it seems they forgot to let you know." He tried to hide his embarrassment, and I took the opportunity to ask, "Do you know where the DJ's equipment is? I work with events too, technical curiosity." He pointed discreetly. "Over there in the hallway by the stage, but access is for staff only." Smiled. "Relax. I'm used to limited access." I left the glass on the counter and walked in the indicated direction. I went down the corridor and entered the sound area, illuminated by monitors and cables. The DJ was focused, and on the screen, a list of files in order. Bride entrance MP4, parents surprise video MP4. A silver flash drive was blinking, connected to the machine. It was from the filming company. I took out another one, mine, the one I always carried for work, and discreetly swapped them. I copied my files into a new directory, ceremonial_review. There were the proofs I had gathered. No scandal, no aggressive speech. Just truths, clean, organized, recorded. Before leaving, I observed the central screen off in silence. Soon it would be lit to honor the family. But for the first time, someone not on the list would also appear. I returned to my table and sat down, feeling the exact weight of what I was about to do. It wasn't revenge for vanity, it was justice by name. And as the sound of the hall grew again, I murmured to myself with an almost serene smile, "Whoever put me in the corner forgot that I'm the one who draws the map." I picked up my phone, saved the audio with a new title, Proof 5, When Love Knows Its Place. And I looked at the stage where the parents' video was about to begin. The right moment was coming. And when it came, what would shine on the screen would not be perfect love. It would be the truth with all the lights on. The hall lights dimmed. The DJ announced into the microphone with an animated voice. "And now, a special moment prepared by the groom's parents, a video tribute to the family." The guests began to applaud. The muffled sound of glasses and seats being adjusted echoed through the hall. The screen lit up, showing old images of my brother as a child, on a bicycle, at school, at his first job. The audience laughed, moved. I watched in silence, my heart beating at a calculated pace. I had already left the flash drive with the sound assistant minutes before, under the pretext of correcting a rendering error. No one suspected. After all, I was always the one who discreetly solved problems. The images continued. My mother appeared on the screen, smiling, her voice narrating in the background. "The family is the mirror where we recognize ourselves. And love is the limit that protects us." The limit. The word pierced me like a crystal knife. At the exact moment it echoed, I knew the moment had arrived. The video ended in applause. The lights came back on and everyone raised their glasses. Before the DJ could play the next song, the screen flickered. The projector sound changed tone, and a new sequence began. Clean, without effects, without music. The first slide. A photo of the paper badge, enlarged, occupying the entire screen. The black letters screamed on the white. Limited access guest. The guests looked confused. The murmur began. I remained seated. The second slide appeared. The seating chart, with my name crossed out in pen and an arrow pointing to table 12 side. The caption simple. Restricted access area, as per family request. The music stopped completely. The air became heavy. The third slide showed the printed email, the same one I had found in the dressing room trash. Avoid prominent photos. Signature, Marta, mother of the groom. The signature was clear, elegant, undeniable. The hall plunged into a silence that was no longer discomfort. It was revelation. My mother, in the center, turned to the sound technician, desperate. Turn that off. Now. But the video continued. The fourth slide showed screenshots from the wedding committee group, with highlighted phrases. She's a bit temperamental, better to leave her in the corner. The sister might cause trouble. The audience began to whisper. Is this serious? Was it her? My God. And finally the last slide. A simple sentence on a black background. Kindness doesn't ask for a badge. The lights came back on. The DJ, pale, didn't know what to do. My mother, trembling, stood up, holding the microphone. Her voice failed on the first attempt. Ask for it. It was me. The sound of clinking glasses stopped. The groom, my brother, looked at her incredulous. You did that to Anna. She tried to speak, but her voice disappeared. The entire hall watched, stunned. The bride's mother-in-law put a napkin to her mouth, shocked. The bride squeezed my brother's hand. I stood up slowly. I walked to the center of the hall, my steps firm, and stopped next to the microphone my mother was still holding. It's okay, Mom. I'll speak. I took the microphone. The sound echoed lightly, cleanly. Sorry for the technical improvisation, I began with a half-smile. But sometimes you have to show the backstage to understand the scene. I looked around at each face, each gaze divided between guilt and curiosity. For months, I heard that the wedding was about union, love, and respect. And yet, I was treated as someone who needed to be limited, because my tone, my way, my presence could cause trouble. My mother was crying now, mascara smudging her face. I continued. This isn't just about a badge. It's about how many times black women are marginalized, even within their own homes, in the name of good appearance. I grew up learning not to make a scene. But silence is also a scene, the most convenient of all. The entire hall remained quiet. Only the sound of people's heavy breathing filled the air. So, if you saw something uncomfortable today, great. Because discomfort is the first step of change. I returned the microphone to the stand. My mother tried to touch my arm, but I took a step back. Today, Mom, you taught me something new. That love without respect is also a form of humiliation. She cried louder, trying to say something, but the microphone was already off. I returned to my table, and this time, no one dared to look at me with pity. To the back of the hall, the bride gave me a timid nod. Not of guilt, but of recognition. And my brother, motionless, could only manage a short, broken but sincere sentence. You shouldn't have had to do that. I smiled slightly. But I had to. The music resumed, hesitantly, and the hall moved in a bewildered silence. Some feigned normalcy, others watched in admiration. And I, for the first time that night, took a deep breath and felt the air belong to me. On the badge still pinned to my dress, the paper was starting to come loose at the edges. I tore it off, folded it calmly, and put it in my purse. This time, not as a memento, as a trophy. The rest of the party became a silent film. People moved, but the sound seemed to come from underwater. I saw my mother being led to one of the chairs by my father, who barely disguised his shame. Her face, smudged with makeup, seemed smaller. The golden dress, once radiant, now weighed like broken armor. The bride tried to restore the mood with a toast, but her words stumbled. The photographer, embarrassed, turned off the flash between one photo and the next. The DJ lowered the music volume, and the hall filled with a different kind of noise, that of guilt. I stood there, in the middle of the dance floor, as if the ground had finally recognized me again. Curious eyes came from all sides, a mix of pity and fascination. And as strange as it seemed, I felt peace. Not the peace of revenge, but that of truth. My brother came to me. His jacket was wrinkled, and his eyes were teary. "You had the right," he said. "It wasn't about right," I replied. "It was about a limit." He took a deep breath. "It will take Mom a while to understand. Maybe she never will. But at least this time it wasn't just my voice she heard. It was her own voice echoing back." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends. Don't leave yet." I agreed with a half-smile. I stayed. Minutes later, the DJ resumed the playlist, trying to rebuild the party. Slowly, the noise returned, timidly, like a child returning to play after being punished. But no one danced as before. The joy now had a conscience. I returned to my table, and for the first time it wasn't empty. 2 bridesmaids approached, the same ones who had laughed in the bathroom earlier. One of them put her hand on my shoulder. "I didn't know, Anna. Seriously. I thought it was your choice to stay away." "That's what they always think," I replied. The other, younger one, lowered her eyes. "What you did was brave." "Well, it was necessary." They nodded and returned to the center of the hall. I took a deep breath and observed the details around me. The shine of the floor, the flowers beginning to wilt, the smell of perfume mixed with nervousness. It was impressive how luxury couldn't disguise discomfort. My mother stood up, unsteadily, and came to me. Everyone watched, as if watching a final scene of a soap opera. "Anna," she began, her voice hoarse. "I exaggerated. I just wanted to avoid embarrassment. I didn't want you to be a target. I was anyway." She looked away. "You always draw attention, honey. I tried to protect you." Protection is not erasing. It's giving space to exist. She bit her lower lip. "You can't imagine the fear I've had my whole life of seeing you suffer for being the way you are. Black." I completed. She nodded, in silence. "So your fear became a habit," I continued. "And the habit became control. But what you call care, Mom, I called absence." The tears fell slowly, and I didn't look away from her. For the first time she seemed to really see me, not as a daughter, nor as a memory of something she needed to disguise, but as a whole woman without a frame. "I love you," she said quietly. "No. But love without courage hurts." She tried to touch my hand, and I let her. It was the briefest and most honest touch of our lives. From the stage, my brother broke the silence. "Folks, I think love learns too." The lights turned to him. "We always say that marriage is a new beginning, right? So maybe today is the new beginning for our family too." Some guests applauded. Others cried. My mother looked up and, between sobs, nodded. The hall, once tense, relaxed. The band resumed the music, now a soft samba, with old lyrics about forgiveness. My brother pulled me by the hand. "Come, dance with me." I thought about refusing, but my body responded before my mind. The dance floor opened up, and I followed him. We danced slowly, laughing through tears. He rested his face on my shoulder and said, almost in a whisper, "You were never a guest, Anna. You were always essential." The lights spun above us. The camera started flashing again. And for the first time that night I saw myself in focus, not as a reparation, but as a legitimate presence. When the music ended, the applause sounded sincere. Not for the spectacle, but for the collective relief. My mother, on the other side, watched me in silence. Between us there was an abyss, But for the first time, I saw a bridge being born. I went to her, took the crumpled sticker from my purse, and held it out to her. To remember that paper tears, Mom. But respect, when it's real, never comes off. She took the badge, her fingers trembling, and held it to her chest. I didn't need to say anything more. The sound of the music, the timid laughter of the people, and the warm air of the early morning already spoke for me. The table was reorganized, and this time I was at the center of it. The party slowly wound down, as if the hall itself needed to catch its breath after what it had witnessed. The lights dimmed, conversations turned to whispers, and the DJ switched the frenetic rhythm for something slower, a string melody that sounded like a farewell. I sat in the corner, watching the end of what was never a beginning for me. On the other side, my mother was talking to the event planner. Her face was still swollen, her eyes red, her body tired from holding itself up on its own guilt. The woman held a clipboard and said, without realizing I was listening, "Mrs. Marta, you were very brave to admit it. No one would do that. Courage." She replied, the word bitter. My daughter had courage. I was just left with no choice. I saved that sentence like a seed. It was the first time I saw her name herself as part of the problem, and not as a martyr. I went to the bar, ordered a water with lime, and leaned on the counter. The employee who had mistaken me for staff earlier came to serve me. "Sorry about before, ma'am. I didn't know." "It's okay," I replied without anger. "You just repeated what you were taught. The one who is serving is never family." She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "But now I know." As I drank the water, my phone vibrated with notifications. The group women who direct their own story was buzzing. The messages came one after another. "I saw the video, Anna. Someone posted a clip. It was liberating to see your mother take responsibility. Thank you for doing what so many of us wanted to do and never had the courage." I read slowly, feeling my heart warm. This was no longer just my story. It was a lit mirror for others. I took a deep breath and typed a short, unheroic, just true reply. It wasn't about revenge. It was about a limit. And a limit is also love. I sent it and put my phone away. My brother's voice echoed from the microphone, soft. "Before we close, I want to thank my sister for reminding me that family is made of people, not papers. We don't need to hide to fit in. From today on, every event in our family will have her name on the list. At the top." Applause. Genuine. Clean sound without embarrassment. I looked at my mother, and she was clapping too, her smile shy, torn, real. My brother came down from the stage and came to me. "You should tell this story, Anna. Not to hurt, but to teach." "I'm already telling it," I replied, looking at the hall. "Look around." Some guests came to say goodbye, embarrassed, others sincere. A bridesmaid hugged me. "You made me think about how I treat my sister." "Thank you." The night went on, and the hall, once a stage of shame, now seemed like a collective confessional. No one spoke loudly, but there was understanding in the air. And for those who are listening to me now, because I know someone is listening, perhaps this is the turning point. If you've ever been put in the background, share this story. It's not just mine. It belongs to every woman who has had her name crossed off the table and her smile tested in the mirror. Out of nowhere, the DJ, perhaps without knowing what he was doing, played a slow version of "Ain't No Mountain High Enough." My brother pulled me to dance again, and this time my mother approached as well. The three of us stood in the middle of the dance floor. Improvised, misaligned, true. She rested her face on my shoulder and murmured, "I didn't know it hurt you so much. And I didn't know you could still learn." For a moment I felt time stop. The lights danced above us, the floor reflected our mixed feet, and the song's lyrics repeated that nothing is too high, too far, too strong to separate the love of those who decide to cross. When it ended, my mother held my hand and said, almost voiceless, "Thank you for not giving up on me. I just refused to be erased." She smiled shyly and squeezed my fingers. "No badge, honey. No badge," I confirmed. As the hall emptied and the early morning was announced at the window, I realized that somehow what began as an exposure had turned into reconstruction. And at that moment, among the shards of a party night, I understood. It wasn't about winning. It was about existing out loud. I put my phone in my purse, looked at the blank screen and thought, if love is real, it doesn't need a password to enter. Dawn arrived like a tired breeze, washing away what was left of the party. The floor was covered in crushed petals and forgotten glasses. I walked slowly, observing the details, the same gaze I use when I dismantle an event the next day. Except this time what was being dismantled was the farce. The team began to clear the tables. The clatter of cutlery and dragging chairs sounded like a closing soundtrack. The golden light of the chandeliers now seemed more human, less of a spectacle. What remained was just truth. And the truth is never elegant, but it is always liberating. I found my mother alone near the garden. She was sitting on a wooden bench, barefoot, her shoes beside her, holding the badge I had returned. The adhesive tape was worn, yellowed, as if it had aged 20 years in a few hours. I couldn't throw it away, she said without looking at me. You don't have to, I replied, sitting next to her. It has already served its purpose. She let out a short, tired laugh. You always have an answer for everything. I learned from you. I just changed the tone. The wind rustled the leaves, and for a few seconds we were silent. She took a deep breath, as if trying to find the exact point between regret and forgiveness. You know, when I was younger, I also learned that a black woman needs to be discreet. That standing out too much is tempting fate. And I believed it. When I saw you growing up, I thought that if I contained you, I would protect you from the world. I looked at her, trying to measure the weight of what I was hearing. But you ended up protecting me from love. She blinked, surprised. The words seemed to echo in her before they settled. Yes, maybe so. Mom, I grew up thinking that respect was asked for in a low voice. Today I know. Respect is demanded with your head held high. She nodded slowly, her gaze lost in the darkness of the field. I wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. Even when I silenced you, I knew you were what I could never be. And you still can be, I replied. But for that, you'll have to accept the discomfort. The truth hurts, but it heals. She turned her face to me, her eyes full of water, and said something I never imagined I would hear from her. Thank you for exposing me. Sometimes, shame is the only mirror that makes us see ourselves. That sentence dismantled me more than any defense. For the first time, I realized that my mother was not just the villain of my story. She was the result of another wound, older, inherited, and never treated. We sat there together watching the end of the party. The distant sound of the team dismantling the stage seemed like a heartbeat. I felt like laughing and crying at the same time. Do you remember what Dad used to say when we fought? I asked. That family was like embroidery, she replied. Beautiful on the right side, full of knots on the wrong side. So maybe today we turned the fabric over. She smiled, a light, true smile. And even so, it's still beautiful. The sky was beginning to lighten on the horizon, a lilac streak announcing the dawn. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. It was as if, after so long, the air belonged to me again. Will you forgive me someday? She asked in a low voice. Already have. What I won't do is forget. Memory is what keeps respect alive. She rested her head on my shoulder, and we were silent, just listening to the wind and the distant sound of someone turning off the hall lights. I thought about how many times, at other weddings, parties, meetings, women like me were pushed to the corner, erased in the name of harmony. How many times they swallowed their anger so as not to stain the family photo. And I felt that that night was not just mine. It was a crack open for all of them. I took the badge from her hands, smoothed the paper and whispered, "This is not a memento. It's a historical record. And what are you going to do with it? Keep it. To remember that my voice wasn't born yesterday. It just grew up." She laughed lightly, and the sound was simple, human, beautiful. Before we went back inside, I looked at the empty hall and said out loud, more to myself than to her, "If they ever push you out of the picture, don't beg to get back in. Because the light, sooner or later, will need you to complete the frame." My mother held my hand, and we walked out together side by side. There was no audience, no applause, no music. Just the sound of dawn sewing together what was left of us, and there, between the end and the new beginning, I understood. Justice may be born from pain, but dignity blossoms in forgiveness. The sun was beginning to rise behind the eucalyptus trees of the farm hotel, and the orange light cut through the curtains of the now empty hall. Everything seemed more real at that hour. The dirty glasses, the floor marked with footsteps, the flower arrangements drooping on the tables. The glamour was gone, and what remained was the human trace, the most sincere that night had produced. I picked up my purse, the flash drive, and the badge. The paper was soft, the glue already weak. I ran my finger over the faded letters. Limited access guest. For a moment I thought about tearing it up, but something in me asked me to keep it. Not as a grudge, but as proof that even what they try to use to limit you can become a memory of liberation. My mother appeared at the door of the hall, still barefoot. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes deep. She looked smaller but strangely more real. "Do you want a ride to the city?" "Oh, I prefer to drive." She nodded. "Of course. Now you drive." I smiled without irony. I took the car key and hugged her lightly. Not a hug of reconciliation, one of a new beginning. "Will you come for lunch on Sunday?" she asked. "Pens. Are you still going to separate the tables by access level?" She laughed, a shy, embarrassed laugh. "No. I think I learned that lesson. Then maybe I'll go." I walked to the parking lot. The morning wind hit my face, and for the first time in a long time I didn't feel rushed. I opened the car door, sat down, took a deep breath, and started the engine. The sound was familiar, comforting, almost a melody, and the rearview mirror. I saw my mother watching me from the porch. The sun lit up her face, and for a second, I realized that regret can also be a form of love, as long as it is accompanied by change. I picked up my phone and recorded a short voice note, speaking as if to myself, or to whoever might need to hear it. Not all pain deserves revenge. Some deserve remembrance, because it is by remembering that we prevent them from repeating. The color of my skin was never the problem. The problem is others' fear of seeing its reflection. But the reflection is not erased, it spreads. Today, the badge they tried to stick on my chest doesn't embarrass me. It identifies me. It says what they wanted to hide, that I was there, and that now no one limits me anymore. I sent the audio to the group women who direct their own story and turned off the phone. The road to the city was long, lined with trees swaying in the wind. The sun was rising on the horizon, and as I accelerated, a feeling of lightness took over my body. It was as if I were shedding an old layer, a skin that had already served its time. On the radio, a song began to play, a female voice, deep, powerful. The lyrics said something about coming home being someone else. Smiled. It seemed like a custom-made soundtrack. I took the badge from the passenger seat and let it fly out the window. The paper spun in the air, free, until it disappeared into the field. And, for the first time in a long time, I felt that my name fit entirely in my voice. The phone vibrated with a new message from the group. "Anna, you inspired us. We're going to make a series of videos about family racism. Do you want to open the first one?" I took a deep breath and replied with just one sentence. "Yes, but not to teach. To remember." The road opened up ahead, long and golden in the mirror. The farm was already lost in the distance. The past, finally, was becoming a point on the map, visible but small, and as the wind messed up my hair, I thought, they tried to limit me to a paper badge. Now, I'm the one who writes the credentials. Accelerated. The car responded as if it understood, and before crossing the last gate of the farm, I looked in the rearview mirror and whispered, to myself, to my mother, to all the women who have ever been left out of the picture. Unlimited access. To my story, to my place, to what is mine. The road seemed endless, but for the first time I didn't want it to end. The sun rose slowly, gilding everything around, and the wind coming through the window smelled of wet earth, of a new beginning. The radio was off. The only sound was the engine and my breathing, calm, rhythmic, clean. I thought about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours and realized that, deep down, it wasn't just about a wedding. It was about all the invitations that life had denied me in the name of harmony. About all the times I was told it's not the right time. This is not the place for that. Don't exaggerate. Yesterday, each of those phrases had a face. And today, each of them had lost its power. When the cell signal returned, the device vibrated with dozens of notifications. My name was already circulating in the family groups. The comments were a mix of astonishment and defense. She should have solved this at home. Did she have to expose her own mother? I would have done the same. I didn't answer anything. Their words no longer belonged to me. I learned that those who are used to being erased don't need to justify the light. Further on, I stopped at a gas station. I ordered a strong coffee, sat on the concrete bench, and opened my phone. A new message blinked at the top of the screen. It was from my middle sister, Luciana, with whom I hadn't spoken in months. I saw the video. Hurt. But thank you. I think I also lived with a badge and didn't realize it. I stared at that sentence for a while. Her words pierced me with tenderness and sadness. I wrote back. Then tear yours off too, Lou. We don't need permission to exist. I sent it and put the phone away. Next to the station, there was a field of sunflowers that stretched as far as the eye could see. I walked to the fence and watched the intense yellow. They moved slowly, following the sun. All turned the same way, but none identical to the other. I thought of how many women I knew who had lived their whole lives trying to align themselves with the light of others, forgetting their own. I closed my eyes and let the wind touch my face. I felt the weight of the past dissolve like dust. I remembered when I was a child and my mother would say, "Honey, lower your voice. Pretty women don't talk loud." And now, as an adult, I understood. My voice wasn't loud. It was necessary. I went back to the car, but before getting in, I took out my phone and recorded another audio. This time not for the group, but for myself. Promise. I will never again accept invisible badges. Neither the paper ones nor those disguised as love, hierarchy, or favor. I will sit at the table, even if no one calls me. And if there is no chair, I will bring my own. Because I am not part of the event. I am the whole story. I pressed save and left the file in the memories folder. Back on the road, the words echoed inside me with new strength. It was strange. After so much pain, the silence now sounded like victory. When I arrived in the city, the traffic was already waking up. Horns, vendors, the world moving on as if nothing had happened. And at the same time, everything had changed. I stopped at a traffic light and saw my reflection in the rearview mirror. The same face that, for years, they tried to adjust to fit into frames that never belonged to me. Smiled. The expression lines seemed like beautiful scars. Marks of someone who resisted without losing tenderness. The light turned green, and a simple thought crossed my mind. Racism tries to convince you that you should be grateful for being invited. But life is yours. You are the event. Accelerated. The open windows let the wind in and messed up my hair. The sound of the tires on the pavement seemed like music, and for a moment, I imagined all the women who would hear me later, each driving their own path, tearing up their own invisible badge. And at that moment, I understood the true meaning of the word freedom. It's when the name they tried to diminish fits entirely in your chest again. The sun was already high when I finally parked at home. I turned off the car and sat there for a few minutes, looking at the key in the ignition. A simple but powerful symbol, I whispered to myself with a light, firm, definitive smile. Access granted, to everything I am, to everything I deserve, to everything that comes next. I entered my house and felt the silence embrace me. A different silence. Not one that hides, but one that welcomes. I put my purse on the table, took off my shoes, and walked slowly through the living room. Every corner seemed to breathe with me, as if the whole house was waiting for me to occupy my space completely. The mirror in the entrance returned a new image. Me, the same face, the same hair, but the gaze. The gaze was different. It had firmness. It had presence. Had a story. For a second I stood there, staring at my own reflection, until I realized that the woman looking back at me owed nothing to anyone anymore. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. The aroma filled the air, familiar, warm, intimate. I sat at the table and opened the notebook where I used to jot down ideas for projects I always left for later. I wrote on the first page a sentence I had never had the courage to record. I am the heir to what I want to build, and no one else gives me permission to exist. I closed the notebook and looked out the window. The day was beginning to open up in light colors, and the people outside were rushing, as if the world was in a hurry to continue. I was not. For the first time I could stand still, just feeling the light weight of my own body. I picked up my phone, opened the voice app, and recorded what would be the last note of this story. Not a farewell, but a manifesto. This is me. The woman who, for a lifetime, got used to being too polite to react, who confused silence with elegance, who believed that being good was enough to be accepted. But I learned that racism is not dismantled with good manners. It is confronted with clarity. And that dignity is not begged for, it is sustained. Today I saw myself. And in seeing myself I realized that I am not an exception. I am a continuation. I am the daughter of those who stood up when the world wanted them to bow. I am the granddaughter of those who smiled even when the invitation to the table never came. And now I sit. Without asking for permission. Because this place was always mine. I saved the audio and left the phone on the table. Outside, the sound of birds mixed with the distant noise of the waking city. The sun came through the window and fell on my hands, warming them slowly, the kind of warmth that doesn't come from outside, but from within. I took the cup, took the first sip, and closed my eyes. The bitter and sweet taste of the coffee seemed like a summary of everything I had lived. Bitter enough to remember, sweet enough to move on. And as the day was born in full, a certainty lit up inside me. They tried to limit me to a badge, but I became the manual. I smiled, I opened the laptop and started writing the draft of what would be the first episode of a new series. A story about Black women, family racism, and moral twists. The first line came out effortlessly. In life, the most important invitation is not the one they send you. It's the one you make for yourself. I closed the document, looked at the ceiling, and took a deep breath. And before ending the day, I left a final message for anyone who might hear this story. If this story has crossed you, if you have ever been diminished with delicacy, excluded with smiles, or silenced in the name of peace, share it, because every time a woman speaks, another understands that she is not alone, and when we speak together, the world reorganizes. I smiled again, feeling my heart light. That I got up, opened all the windows in the house, and let the wind in. It moved the curtains, spread the smell of coffee, and carried away what was left of the old air there. Between the soft noise of the city and the warmth of the sun on my face, I whispered softly, to myself, to all forever. Unlimited access granted to my voice, to my color, to my story. If this story has touched you, if you too have had to rebuild your own dignity, subscribe here. Because every time a Black woman rises, a crowd awakens with her. And before the coffee got cold, I closed my eyes and let the last sentence echo inside me. Now no one else defines my access. I am the key.